I could have waited. Hey, it's Romania Black, but I couldn't. No, not after in Volume 5. After a cliffhanger like that, could I have waited? Nope. Hua Cheng is back. There's lots of mysteries. I'm like, no, I couldn't wait anymore. And I'm very sorry because I know that this weekend, I'm recording a little bit early, obviously. This weekend, the new Manhwa chapter is coming out, and I was going to wait till Saturday so I could read the Manhwa chapter, but then I was like, I have this afternoon free. I really want to read ahead and find out. So I'm sorry. Next week, with the next manhwa, with the next set of chapters, we will talk about the manhwa. So I'm not going to neglect it anymore. So if you're craving manhwa dialogue, not this week, but next week we'll get into it. Don't worry. So I will wait until a manhwa chapter comes out to read over those chapters. But we've got a big chunk today. We're looking at chapters 155, 156, 157, 158, 4 chapters over the course of like 40 pages. There's a big old, lots of stuff can happen, so I'm really, really excited about it, right? But I have a few comments that I want to talk about, but I've got over on Whiteboard Kun now. You all can't see it. But I have what I'm going to keep on Whiteboard Kun, I think, for the remainder of this volume at least, and then update it as we go. But I have unresolved plot points, because after last week when I went back and looked at the novels, I was like, man, we still have a lot of unresolved plot points that have not been elaborated or explained, and so I want explanations for them. So my unresolved plot points that I'm hoping we get to by volume 8, obviously. The second ascension and descension, that's the big one. That's the big one that I'm sure they're waiting on till the end of the story to tell us, because we've waited this long. Why wouldn't we wait except till the end? The fetus spirit origin, their origin, like how did they become a fetus spirit? That seems pretty important. That's an unresolved plot point. Hua Cheng's promotion, I talked about it last week. The fact that Xie Lian wanted to make him a deputy general and Mu Qing did not relay that information correctly. I want answers, so that's an unresolved plot point, as well as Hua Cheng's origin. When did he die? How did he die? How did he become a supreme ghost? I mean, we know the logistics. He was in Mount Tonglu for 10 years, but what else happened? Like, I want to know more, so that's an unresolved plot point. The whole thing about Mu Qing possibly being Fu Yao, that's an unresolved plot point. Ling Wen and Bai Jing. I'm hoping by the end of this volume we have the Ling Wen and Bai Jing stuff explained. I feel like we're going to, but that's an unresolved plot point as of now. We know just enough, and then Jingwen gave us even more to think about last week, so I'm like, okay. The Goshi of Shanla, and I just put Wuyang, like, in general, the mural, the temple, the 4 kings, like, how that all works. Like, I just Wuyang in general is a thing. And then, obviously, the Goshi of Shanla. Long Ying, both the adult and child, there's a lot of mystery surrounding them, so they're an unresolved plot point. The Windmaster and Heshan, where are they? What are they doing? Heshan's the supreme ghost. Where's he at right now? Don't know. That's unresolved. The Rainmaster, again, we've talked a lot about the Rainmaster in this volume, so I'm hoping that April showers will bring May flowers, and we'll get to know more about the Rainmaster as we go. That's my hope anyway. But hopefully we get them and Jing and Ling Wen kind of wrapped up in volume 5. Qi Ying, Chan Yizhen, where's he? Don't know. Bai Wusheng's death. That's been hinted at. Junwu says it happened. I'm calling no body, no death. I want to see this, and I'm sure that that's going to tie into, I feel like it's going to have to tie in at some point to Wuyang, at some point to maybe Xie Lian's second ascension and descension. I don't know. It seems like a lot of the things that I'm like have question marks by all seem like they could be somewhat interrelated, so I'm going to be curious if that ends up happening. And then Xie Lian recognizing Hong Hong Air. God, Xie Lian, when's he going to figure it out? That's an unresolved plot point. And then obviously Hua Cheng's ashes and the ring that Xie Lian has around his neck. I think the ring has his ashes in them, but I don't know. I don't know. But those are my unresolved plot points. I'm sure that that list will grow and change as we go through these last 3 volumes, but I'm going to keep it on Whiteboard Coon as long as I can. So we're going to just use that when we go back to Whiteboard Coon each time and just kind of update it as we go. But I've got some questions before we start, or some comments. Miss Angel, again, every week people try to help me pronounce the fetus spirit's name, and it gives me a lot of joy. Miss Angel said that you just say like the Su, like in tsunami, and then oh, so. So I'm like, okay, tsunami, so. I'm feeling better about it. I feel like I'll be confident getting it at some point, right? Anime Annie talked about Pei Ming from last week, which I thought was really good to bring up. Pei Ming, I kind of thought it had been a joke that Pei Ming was referring to Hua Cheng so very formally. I thought he was doing it kind of like condescendingly. But the way Anime Annie talks, they're like, no, they actually are, and it checks out with his character. They are legit respectful, and they're calling Hua Cheng by his formal name out of respect, which I thought was really cool. I liked that. It makes sense because Xie Lian and Pei Ming, surprisingly, what they have in common is that they don't really judge others based on where they're from. Like, Xie Lian doesn't care about the ghosts in the ghost city. He's like, oh, they're ghosts. He doesn't really judge them, right? And my thing is, Pei Ming isn't going to judge the ghosts because he's sleeping with half of them. Right? He's like, oh, I'm sleeping with the lady ghosts. They're no different than the mortals or the heavenly officials. I don't know any heavenly official that Pei Ming has slept with, except supposedly Ling Wen, and they say that hasn't happened. But the mortals and ghosts, Pei Ming's like, I'll love them all, right? So I thought that was really important to mention, as well as 2 other things with Pei Ming. One, when he put his arms around Banyu's like, I wasn't scared. There was no reason to do that. And Anime Annie said, well, that's kind of funny because Pei Ming's like, well, when you're in a dark place and, a girl gets scared, she like puts her arms around you and you just feel like you have to embrace her. That wasn't happening here. Banyu was not at all embracing him. So Anime Annie was like, is that inclining that Pei Ming was scared in the moment and he's the one that reflexively put his arm around Banyu to get some security there? I think that would be pretty funny, and I think that's likely the case, but we can't confirm, right? And then Anime Annie said that Pei Ming, he can take any physical flirting that happens between Hua Cheng and Xie Lian, but the moment things start getting emotional and very intimate and romantic, Pei Ming's like, I'm out. So you could say that's because he's being classy and he doesn't want to get involved, or you could say that that's kind of Pei Ming's personality. He loves the physicality of romance, just not the emotional baggage that comes with it. So I thought those were all really good comments about Pei Ming. And then finally, it was brought up like a what if scenario. I'm usually very hesitant with what ifs because normally they're either spoilers or they're not, but also spoilers. So for example, someone had brought up in the comments, they're like, well, if the Goshi of Shanla was the crown prince, it'd be kind of funny because then the Goshi was the crown prince, became the Goshi of Shanla. Xie Lian was the crown prince, became the Goshi of Yong'an. Should Lan Shu be worried about things? And I was like, yeah, that's funny. But if it turns out that the Goshi of Shanla is the crown prince and you just spoiled me on that, I'm gonna be pissed. So I was like, it's one of those, it's like a Schrodinger's cat situation where even if it was a joke, and I appreciate the joke, but it's one of those things where either you've just spoiled me of what the answer is, or you've spoiled me that that's not a possibility, and now I can't talk about it in the theories. Because now, if they're like, oh, I'm just joking, the Goshi of Shanla isn't the crown prince, I'm like, cool. Well, now I don't get to talk about that anymore with y'all because that's clearly not a thing. So just please be careful. That's something that really, I'm like, if somebody spoils me on from here on in, if I get a spoiler in the comments, whether it's intentional or unintentional, and it turns out to be a spoiler, then I'm just going to stop reading all comments. Cut off. That's what I've got to do because I only get a chance to read this story once and react to it with you all. After I've read it once, I can't go back and redo it. So I am so adamant about staying away from anything that could be a spoiler or any clues or hints or comments that lead me in a direction to think about a character that ends up spoiling the surprise, So just please be careful. And if you're on Patreon, please go to Discord first and ask like, hey, is this a spoiler? Do you think this would be a spoiler? If you're not sure. Just, it's better to be safe than sorry, so that my experience can be as good as it can be for you all, and that I can keep reading your comments. That's all I ask. Like, it's all I want. So with that being said, we've talked enough, but I'm really excited to dive into these chapters. I hope my dogs are good and not turds. But I hope you all enjoy, but I couldn't wait. I needed to get into these chapters because Hua Cheng's back. So what are we going to do about that, right? So with that being said, lay down, Huckleberry. Lay down. Lay down. There we go. All right. Hopefully maybe he'll go lay down. So we're going to start chapters 155 to 158 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 155, mountains high and roads unending, narrow paths blocked. Treading across the ground strewn with exquisite crimson fragments, Xie Lian walked over slowly. When he saw that Hua Cheng's shoulders were littered with a few red blossoms, he wanted to dust them off of him, but suddenly realized that gesture would be overly intimate. Yes, in fact, it would be. You should still do it anyway. So he forced down the urge and tucked his arms behind his back, smiling. Oh, I wish he would have done it. I wish he would have. Not only can you bring forth bloody rain, but you can also make flowers shower. I didn't know that. How fun! Hua Cheng also walked towards him, easily dusting off the petals off his shoulders, also smiling. This was just something spontaneously inspired, a trick I only just came up with today. Originally, there should have been the usual blood rain, but I suddenly remembered Gege was also present, and wouldn't you blame me if you were drenched? So I held back at the last second and transformed it into flowers instead. I'm glad you found it fun. Ah! However, while Xie Lian wasn't drenched, Pei Ming was completely soaked. He called out while hanging in the air, "Excuse me, you two, let me down, won't you?" A few silver butterflies fluttered upwards, their wings shimmering silver as they tore the net. The fact that these butterflies can tear the net that Pei Ming couldn't get out of is cause for concern. Allowing Pei Ming to finally break free and land steadily on the ground. Xie Lian looked down and saw that at the center of Ling Wen's spine there rested a silver butterfly. Sun Long, Ling Wen, and the Brocade Immortal are both all right, right? They're fine. I've only put them to sleep temporarily. Oh! The Brocade Immortal was going berserk and you managed to subdue it so fast. Oh, it was fine. For some reason, it didn't want to fight me. It knew better. It knew better, right? Right? Xie Lian, oh, well, that's true. Before, when you put it on, it didn't do anything to you either. It even showed itself. Save the talking for later, you two. Aren't you going to peel that robe off of him first? Wouldn't that be rather inappropriate? He's in his male form right now, so what's there to be embarrassed about? Oh, okay. His hands moved as he spoke, yet as his hands reached Ling Wen's collar, it was like something jabbed him hard. His face dropped as yanking his arms back. His hands were covered in blood. This robe, it bites! Only then did Hua Cheng say lazily, the Brocade Immortal won't let Ling Wen go. You won't be able to take it off of him. Pei Ming looked at his bloody hands and said, well, if something like this happens again, will my Lord Ghost King please warn me sooner? General Pei, it's not that he didn't want to warn you. Your hands move too fast. That's it exactly. Hua Cheng's like, just keep helping me out, Xie Lian. Just keep helping me out. Although crippled, wills remained strong. The three moved to head back the way they came. Someone had to carry the male Ling Wen, so Pei Ming took up that responsibility without a word. Oh, that's what best bro friends are for. Pei Su and Banyu were still in the small town from before. The group reconvened near the divine temple of Wuyong. When Pei saw them come, he strode over to greet them. Oh, General, Your Highness, that mural in the temple, it's disappeared. Pei Ming was carrying Ling Wen in one arm. The other slicked back his blood-soaked hair. What mural? Seeing Pei Ming was covered in wine-red color, Banyu's eyes widened. Xie Lian gave Pei Ming a brief account and went back to the temple with Pei Su to check, and sure enough, the wall earlier that had become exactly as the same of the three burnt ashen walls, as if the mural had never existed. That mural was created by magic. Oh, I got chills. I got chills! Perhaps someone who left it had concerns and didn't leave it for too long. Banyu was hesitant for a long time, but then asked Pei Ming, Are you okay? Why don't you ask your snakes if I'd be okay, having gotten bitten like this? Pei Su opened his mouth to speak, but wasn't sure if he should say something for justice's sake. Banyu's eyes widened even more, and she mumbled as she tried to argue, but a bite from a scorpion snake wouldn't fester to the whole body like this. Pei Ming raised the left hand that carried the bite mark and waved it in front of her, proving he was indeed bitten. This ironclad proof was solid like the mountains, and Banyu could only apologize. I'm sorry. Pei Yu couldn't watch anymore and patted her shoulder. Don't take it to heart. This wasn't caused by the bite of your snakes. Xie Lian couldn't watch anymore and spoke up exasperatedly. General Pei, can you not tease little girls at a time like this? However, this was the source of Pei Ming's life. He used his spiritual powers to cleanse himself of all the blood and grime, his face bright and alive as he laughed out loud. Well, aren't little girls made for teasing? Besides, the ghost of Banyu is how many centuries old now? What little girl? Afraid she might get embarrassed? No one wanted to talk to him anymore. I mean, he's not wrong. Banyu is not a little girl, but still, don't tease her. She feels bad enough. Although Pei Su's broken sentences weren't healed, he could still move like normal now and took over the task of carrying Ling Wen. Oh, they just gave Ling Wen to Pei Su! I'm like, he's mortal. He's mortal! What if she wakes up? The group of them crossed the small town and continued down the next level of Mount Tonglu. A day later, the group reached a small valley. On either side of the valley, there were steep, tall mountains with hardened, rocky bluffs and a mountain path in between. Only when they had come to this point did Ling Wen finally wake blearily. Although awake, he still couldn't move because that silver butterfly was still firmly resting on his back. Oh, it's like subduing him. When Ling Wen discovered that he was being carried on the back of someone, his expression never changed. He only asked in confusion, why are there so many people? How come you're all here? Isn't this Mount Tonglu? This is many, Pei Ming answered. Let me tell you, there'll be more later. You haven't seen everyone yet. There's enough of us to play around at cards. Xie Wen wholeheartedly agreed with the sentiment and couldn't help but smile. After a pause, he spoke up. By the way, Ling Wen, back at Puchi Shrine, Qing chased after you. Where is he now? I don't know. After entering Mount Tonglu, there were too many inhuman creatures swarming in, and His Highness Qi Ying was lost in the crowd. I have no idea where he could be right now. I can't believe you didn't tell me the one who plucked the last lifeline of Zhuli was you. How mean, Pei Ming said. Oh, only then did Xie Lian remember that Pei Ming was also from the kingdom of Zhuli. However, he didn't seem to have any attachment left for Zhuli, since he was only a general and not the king, and was even sabotaged by the ruler before he ascended. So there was no trace of fury or surliness in his voice. He was more so just poking fun. However, Xie Lian was still worried that talking too much of Zhuli would provoke the Brocade Immortal, so he quickly changed the subject. So long, I've been curious about something. What is it? The kiln of Mount Tonglu. What is it exactly? Is it really just a giant stove? Hua Cheng smiled faintly and brought his gaze back. Of course not. But it's a good question, Gege. It just so happens we can see it now. The group looked at the direction he was pointing, and all unconsciously stopped in their steps. That's the kiln? Xie Lian questioned. That's right. Reflected in his inky black eyes was a large mountain, an exceedingly far distance away. Far like it sat at the edge of the world, tall like it reached the heavens, enthroned condescendingly among all peaks, painted in a deep sunken blue. The summit of the mountains was surrounded by a sea of clouds and heavenly winds. A layer of snow could faintly be seen, like a field of ice that never melted. He said leisurely, the kiln is a live volcano, and the heart of all Mount Tonglu. When a new Ghost King is born, that is also when it wakes. A volcanic eruption! That's right. So all Supreme Ghost Kings are born accompanied by blazing fires, lava, and ruinous disasters. Which is kind of interesting because it's like the Ghost King getting born and there's this ruinous disaster. Whenever someone sins, there's lightning and thunder. Interesting. A nice parallel. Imagining that fieriness scenario made eyes glow red. Xie Lian was lost in thought. Pei Ming spoke up. Well, that's too far away. If we continue at this speed, not counting slaying all the ghosts en route, it's going to take a long time. That's why historically, every time Mount Tonglu opened its gates to slaughter, it's like an arduous childbirth. Gege's metaphor is ingenious. Then suddenly he stopped. We're here. So fast? We're here, but not at the kiln. We've come to a Wuyong divine temple. Sure enough, ahead in the center of the valley was a large leaning palace temple. This was the second Wuyong divine temple they'd come across. Xie Lian almost went to rub his eyes and was perplexed. Is that temple real? It couldn't be helped. In fact, almost everyone was doubtful as to whether that temple was real, since it appeared too abruptly. It shouldn't have appeared here. Who had ever seen any temple or shrine be constructed on such a narrow valley over small mountain roads? What was this shitty feng shui? Even if it had been built here, no matter what, it should be at least constructed on the side, but this Wuyong Divine Temple just had to be bluntly constructed in the middle of the valley road like a brainless little tyrant, blazingly blocking the mountain path. Pei Ming lowered his voice. Where there is abnormality, there is evil. Everyone be careful. Ling Wen, who was leaning heavily on Pei Su's shoulder, arduously lifted his head. Everyone, if you don't want to go inside, you can just leap and run across the cliffs. Xie Lian said, no, we have to go in to see if there's any murals. Don't worry, Gege, Hua Cheng said. If you want to go in and see, then do so. It's no big deal. Since he said so, for some reason everyone relaxed, and the group of them slowly approached. The entire time they walked, and until they reached the entrance, nothing odd happened. Crossing through the temple doors and entering the great hall, sure enough, the walls inside this temple were also blackened color from the aftermath of fire. With a light scratch, small pieces of hardened fragments also fell like in the previous temple. Xie Lian was tense at first and alert, but since there didn't seem to be anything hiding in the darkness, he relaxed a bit. He said, let's do this. Soon after, the ashen protection layer of the wall was cleaned off bit by bit, revealing the mural behind. Xie Lian and Hua Cheng began to examine it closely. The contents of the mural in this divine temple were completely different from the previous one. They started studying it from the highest level, the top of the painting. A white-clad young man sat poised upon a jaded futon, his brows quietly handsome. It was the Crown Prince of Wuyong. His eyes were tightly shut, and judging from his posture, he seemed to be in deep, reflective meditation. However, it wasn't tranquil. This Highness, the Crown Prince, had his brows deeply furrowed, and a few drops of cold sweat appeared to be dripping from his forehead. Surrounding him were 4 characters, their expressions deep with concern. It was the 4 guardian deputies under the Crown Prince from the previous mural. Their accessories and attire were exactly the same from the previous painting. Continuing to look downwards, the protection layer was still falling apart gradually, yet not fully cleaned away, and Xie Lian saw a chaotic red field. That's weird. He reached out and lightly touched the wall, puzzled. Is this mural poorly kept? Although he couldn't quite tell what the painting was depicting, he could see the spread of the lines. The colors were all blurry and hazy, like it was trapped in a layer of mist fading away. But this mural was created by magic, so how could it deteriorate like a normal painting? Hua Cheng was also looking at it intently, knitting his brows. Let's give it another minute. The two exchanged looks. Once the burnt, black, and hardened material was thoroughly wiped clean, the entire painting complete, they took a few steps back and stood shoulder to shoulder to look. As the entirety of the mural reflected in Xie Lian's eyes, his breathing stopped and he felt his head go numb. He wondered out loud, stunned. Is this hell? What? What? Chapter 156, the mountains high and roads unending, narrow paths blocked too. Hua Cheng said darkly, no, it's the mortal realm. It was indeed the mortal realm, because depicted within the painting were crammed houses, dense forests, crowds, and yet they were all submerged in a vast, endless sea of fire and flowing lava. The houses and trees were ablaze. Flames burned on the people's bodies. They were screaming. The twisted faces were drawn so realistically that Xie Lian could almost hear their wails next to his ears. In the center of the painting, there was a vibrantly red mountain glowing from the heat, like a giant kiln, exceedingly horrifying. The fire and lava were spewed from the mountain. The meaning of this mural is the volcanic eruption, the fall of the kingdom of Wuyong, Xie Lian pondered. Yes and no, Hua Cheng said. It certainly wasn't completely right, because this is a dream. The portrayal of the tragedy at the bottom of the painting should be a depiction of the Crown Prince of Wuyong's dream. The Crown Prince of Wuyong and the 4 guardian deputies were surrounded by golden light, meaning at this time they had already ascended. He was in the middle of being tormented by a dream, so the content of the dream state had lines and colors that were more hollow in contrast to the reality. Oh, some heavenly officials possessed enormous spiritual might, their talents abnormally incredible. When they saw minuscule omens, they could peek into the future of their dreams. Oh, this was what they called prophecy dreams. Had this dream state that the Highness, the Crown Prince, become reality? Was this how the kingdom of Wuyong fell? Humming for a moment, Xie Lian remarked, there must be someone who wanted to tell us something. The story in this mural should be the continuation from the previous one. I think the closer we get to the kiln, the more our questions will be answered. Just then Ling Wen, who was watching outside the window, spoke up. Everyone, there's something I must ask. Don't you think it's all strange? What's strange? I'm not sure if I remembered wrong, but have those two mountain bluffs ever been this close? Everyone looked outside. Sure enough, when they entered earlier, the mountain bluff was about 3 meters away. But now it was extremely close, like it was going to press into them at any moment. Xie Lian was about to go out and check, but he heard a series of weird crackling and creaking sounds, like the disturbance of earth and trees, bricks and stones being pressured. Now everyone sensed it. What's going on? Oh my god, no, they're being squeezed! Is it an earthquake? Pei wondered. Just as the words left his lips, the wall were cracking and shocking wrinkles into pressure. It's not an earthquake, it's the mountain bluffs on either side were pushing into the divine temple, sitting in its middle. There was no time to explain. He shouted, run! No need for him to tell them. Pei Ming had already kicked down a wall and opened an exit. The group broke through the wall and exited, running forward. However, they were still running within the divine temple of Wuyong. The palace was long and deep, and other than the great hall, there were still many side chambers, small chambers, incense room, training halls, and so on. Thus, the group had to keep running and keep breaking walls, kicking down doors. It was times like these that a martial god's typical way of doing things really helped. However, they only crashed through 2 little chambers before a giant boulder the size of half a man crashed through the roof, falling heavily next to Xie Lian's feet. Boulders from atop the 2 mountain bluffs were coming down from either side. The rumbling noises were endless as more and more rocks fell from the skies. Large ones were like water barrels. Small ones were the size of heads. They dropped from high in the skies, their powers astounding. Fortunately, there was a layer of roof blocking them, and everyone's physical abilities were considerable, allowing them to be able to dodge in time. Only Hua Cheng was completely at ease. As Xie Lian ran and dodged, he suddenly heard Hua Cheng beckon him. Gege, want to come here? He turned his head to look back. Hua Cheng was following closely behind him, his steps steady like he was flying. He was holding a red umbrella he had taken from who knows where, and was smiling brightly at him from underneath it. The fallen rocks were soundly crashing onto the surface of the umbrella. Hua Cheng held the handle with a single hand without swaying. Xie Lian instantly took cover under the umbrella. That was close. Thank goodness for that, San Long. San Long smiled very considerately and very considerately leaned the umbrella more to his side. Come closer, here. You can stand under my umbrella, Ella, Ella. Even though it wasn't the right time, Xie Lian felt his heart skip a beat in spite of himself. Oh, come on! Are you tired holding this up? How about I hold the umbrella for you? The others were fleeing and dodging, running madly, seeing how these 2 were having a good time. They couldn't stand it and couldn't help but call out, hey, isn't this unfair? Hua Chongzu, may I ask if you have any spare umbrellas? Can I hide under your umbrella too? No. And no. Under the objections of the others, Xie Lian was feeling a little embarrassed. He mumbled, oh, the mountain sure is strange. What a damsel. He's like, oh, this mountain sure is strange. Sorry, guys. He was about to sneak away as he spoke, but Hua Cheng stopped him unnoticeably. He leisurely explained, Gege is right. This mountain is certainly strange. Strange spiritually. There are 3 large mountains in Mount Tonglu, and they are called old age, sickness, and death. Although they're not any different from the other mountains, they can move as they will within the perimeters of Mount Tonglu, so some would take them as Mount Tonglu's landmarks. Oh, fascinating. Okay. Fallen rocks continued to crash down violently, but it was peace and harmony under the umbrella. Xie Lian replied, oh, I see. So before that time when Rongguang was disguised as a swift life-extinguishing blade demon, the mountain that was blocking our way was one of those 3 mountain spirits. Lingwen was bumping up and down on Pei Su's back, but still tried to arduously converse. No wonder this divine temple of Wuyong was so strangely built in the middle of the valley. Its original location was probably not so curious, and it was these 2 mountain spirits that came attacking on their own. But birth, old age, sickness, and death are a set, Xie Lian said. There's old age, sickness, and death, but where's birth? Regrettably, there's no birth. At least, I've never seen it before. I would figure Mount Tonglu would be birth, because it births the Supreme Ghost. I figured it would be the fourth one. Meaning there's no chance for life here. Is that it? How cruel, Xie Lian said. Huh. So that's interesting. I figured Mount Tonglu would be birth of the four, but maybe that's the point, that nothing can live here. Immediately after, Banyu explained, the mountain bluffs are still coming closer. When they first entered the valley, the mountain path was about a couple kilometers wide, growing narrower as they walked. When they approached the gates of that Wuyang temple, the road was no more than 30 meters wide, and now the space between the two mountain bluffs was less than 10 meters, and the buildings and walls were still cracking and bending from the pressure. Since the divine temple of Wuyang employed stone beams and other such solid construction materials, it wedged between the two mountains that were simultaneously pushing closer, but it might not last for much longer. Pei Ming yelled, neither forward nor backwards is passable, so let's break through the roof and go upwards. The shower of rocks is nothing, just break them to pieces. But Xie Lian exclaimed, we can't. Right now there's a temple wedge between. If we go upwards, what if the two mountains spirits throw a smacking blow or something? We'll be clapped to death. Clapped to death. During their exchange, the two sides were pushing closer even faster, rumbling and quaking. The space they were in had become less than 6 meters in width between. Under such circumstances, Lingwen was still immobile and couldn't help but cry out, can everyone please come up with something faster? I don't want to get squished to death, thank you! What a diva. Fire was burning their behinds, but ideas didn't come so easily. As the space continued to shrink, shrinking only to the length of a person, Pei Ming suddenly gave a loud shout and leapt up sideways. Oh, okay. Birth, aging, sickness, and death are the 4 causes of suffering in Buddhism. He pushed his arms against the mountain on the left and his legs pushed against the right, and his entire person became a spike, wedging sideways between the two large mountains. Even if I'm going to be squished to death, I don't want to be fucking squished to death by these two shits. I'll hold them down for now. You guys hurry up and think of something. Everyone was stunned by this deed, and Lingwen arduously gave him a thumbs up. Oh, Pei, what a man! Pei Ming gritted his teeth. Welcome! There was no need to explain a martial god's strength. These two mountain bluffs were still trying to press closer, but they seemed to be obtrusively stopped by Pei Ming, and they fell into a stalemate. But this was Pei Ming exerting all spiritual powers he possessed, and it would not last. As Xie Lian rapidly was spinning his wheels trying to come up with a way to escape, the two mountain spirits were slowly gaining the upper hand, forcing Pei Ming's knees to bend. Seeing the situation was not going in their favor, Pei Su cried out, General, I'll come to assist you! He tossed Lingwen, who was leaning on his shoulders, to Banyu, who was also joined the ranks of human spikes. However, he was but a mortal at the moment, so how could he use his spiritual power? The brocade immortal in Lingwen could have been useful, but he was too much of a risk. Releasing him might be adding oil to the flames, like stepping on a venomous snake after falling into a nest of jackals. Thus, Banyu put Lingwen down and said, me too. However, she had the body of a little girl after all. Her limbs were nowhere near the length of the two grown men's, and she was too short to wedge between the walls, so she clapped her palms onto Pei Su's back, transferring spiritual powers to him. The powers of the two combined exploded, their faces red and veins popping. As for Hua Cheng, whose powers were the strongest in the group, he was only watching them as he twirled the red umbrella in his hands, not a bit concerned. Suddenly, Xie Lian pounded a fist in his own palm and cried, I've got it! I've got it! I've got it! I've got it! He had gotten an idea. Xie Lian said, since going forwards, backwards, and upwards won't work, then we'll go downwards. Let's dig a hole and hide for the moment. Lingwen instantly latched on. Good idea. Will you please start on it right now? Pei Ming said, yes, please, hurry. Okay. Xie Lian responded while crazily slashing at the ground with Feng Shen to drill a pit, sand and earth flying all over the place. Next to him, Hua Cheng was holding the umbrella over him, and not only was he not helping, he was even coaxing him. Gege, don't dig anymore. Sit down and rest. No one could take it anymore, and they cried out, Hua Chengzu! Did someone call me? Lingwen laid on the ground in a heap. Hua Chengzu, both yourself and your highness are here too. If you have any tricks or ideas, how about you contribute? None of us want to become stuffing between rock planks after all. And words no one dared say. If you don't have anything, can you please go and become a human spike too? Although Xie Lian was anxious, he was still instinctively trusting of Hua Cheng, so he asked as he continued to dig the pit, Song Long, you have a way? Hua Cheng chuckled. Gege only needs to wait. No need for you to do anything. It'll be fine in a moment. Fire was burning their behinds now, and although everyone almost felt as if they all felt he must have an idea, they still couldn't help but feel the burn. Lingwen was about to say more when Xie Lian suddenly said, What's that noise? Amidst the loud rumbling of falling boulders came another strange noise, approaching rapidly. What was it? Rapidly fast, growing closer. Xie Lian thought the sound was familiar, like he'd heard it somewhere before, and he stopped his mad digging. Could this be? Just as the words left his lips, a spot next to his feet suddenly caved in, revealing a black hole that was big enough to allow 2 people to drop in. Within the hole, the head of a shovel was raised, reflecting a bright white light. It was the sacred shovel of the Earthmaster! That shovel showed itself, but quickly shrank back into the hole. Hua Cheng spoke up a little late, but at least he made it. Let's go. Oh my God! Is Heshon here? Is the Windmaster here? What's happening? Without another word, Xie Lian picked up Ling Wen and threw him down. Then Banyu and Pei Su, then Pei Ming. I love it. With the spiked wedge in the middle ground gone, the 2 mountain spirits increased their speed. Amidst the scratching, quaking sounds, Hua Cheng circled his arms around Xie Lian's waist and held him tight. Let's hurry. Then with him in his arms, they jumped into the underground path. Xie Lian felt like he was sinking into the darkness, and soon after, a thundering roar came from above. The 2 mountains finally completely pressed themselves together. If they were still above ground now, they would have been crushed into meat pancakes. After taking a moment to steady the spirits somewhat, 2 small balls of flame were ignited in the darkness. Xie Lian looked around at the underground path they were situated at in the moment, neither wide nor narrow, neat and orderly, as expected of the path dug by the sacred shovel of the Earthmaster. The others who had dropped in first were all sprawled out, huffing. Hua Cheng released his waist, and Xie Lian also dropped the arm that had unconsciously gripped his shoulder, watching the black-clad man holding the shovel. That black-clad man was also breathing harshly, leaning against the shovel and wiping at his cold sweat. Xie Lian took a few steps closer, looking him over closely. The individual appeared to be a neat and tidy youth, considerably handsome, but only about a 7. What? Only about a 7? What? This ain't no California 10? Also, he didn't seem to have much personality. No doubt he must be someone whose presence was usually very faint. Xie Lian approached him, and the black-clad man looked up. Your Highness. Before he finished, Xie Lian had already seized his wrist. Where's the Lord Windmaster? The black-clad man was taken aback. I don't know. Xie Lian exhaled and said solemnly, My Lord Blackwater, why do you keep up the act? Your revenge is none of my business, but Lord Windmaster did once share a friendship with you and had never committed any crime or harm, so I hope. Just then Ling Wen interrupted. Blackwater? Your Highness, why do you think he's the Blackwater? Their faces are different. Xie Lian looked back and replied doubtfully, because he's holding the sacred shovel of the Earthmaster. Besides, don't we all know the key to a good disguise? This face is so boringly plain, not noticeable in a crowd and all. It must be fake. The trick to disguise was discussed before, and the face of this black-clad youth before them perfectly complied to the key component of an impeccable fake skin, boringly plain. Even if one was to stare at his face for 2 hours after a good night's sleep, his appearance would be completely forgotten the next day, so no doubt this is a molded fake face. However, a moment later, the black-clad youth said, I'm sorry, Your Highness, but I really do look like this. Hua Cheng walked over to and cleared his throat. Okay, this really isn't the Blackwater. This really is his true appearance, Hua Cheng said. So this was a real, naturally born pedestrian face! Oh my God! Oh my God! Xie Lian, I've been there! Put your foot in your mouth! Oh my God! Ah! So is this the Waning Moon officer? Is this him instead? Oh my God, dogs, understand! Xie Lian slapped his forehead with his palm, and a moment later he changed to pressing his hands together in a prayer, inclining to bow in apology. I'm sorry. He actually thought things so matter-of-factly. He actually said to this person's face that he looked boringly plain and not noticeable in a crowd. It couldn't be helped. That face of his really was too much of a model for the perfect disguise. The black-clad youth was also feeling extremely awkward, and he waved his hand. Don't worry, it's nothing. I'm already used to it. Ling Wen then said, Your Highness Yin Yu, thank goodness for your assistance. Yes! All right! So it's the Waning Moon officer! So did Heshon just like give the shovel back to Hua Cheng? Is like, here, I don't want it anymore? Or did Hua Cheng pick it up? Oh, we're going to talk about this. But it's the Waning Moon officer! Right? Right? Yin Yu? Mountains high and roads unending, the narrow paths blocked 3. Upon hearing that address, Xie Lian blinked. It was only then that he realized the youth's voice was a little familiar, and he should have heard it a few times before. The next moment, his eyes moved downward to look at the youth's wrist. Although his wrist was covered by sleeves, Xie Lian was sure that under it hid a black cursed shackle. Pei Ming also rose to his feet to double-check that black-clad youth's identity. Your Highness, Yin Yu. Well, I'll be. I didn't think we'd run into you here. What are you? Yin Yu scratched the tip of his nose with his finger and returned the greeting. Ling Wen, Zejun. General Pei Jr. Suddenly a voice humphed. Yin Yu. You're that Yin Yu who is so thoroughly and miserably defeated by his own Shidi. The faces of the heavenly officials all stiffened and the voice continued. I've got to say, aren't you a little too pathetic? Banishment aside, I can't believe you'd turn your back just like that and become a ghost's errand boy. Compared to that of Chan Yizhen, you really got on badly. To think you're his Shizhong. That voice came from Rongguang, who was still shut inside the pot. Peisu instantly stuck a talisman on him to shut him up. Whether it was under Jun Wu or Huang Changzhu, Yin Yu was an errand boy, and there was no difference. Still, to be in the same room as his former heavenly colleagues now that he had become a ghost officer was like an arresting officer turned thief who was exposed by old comrades. The air was filled with awkwardness. No one knew what to say, so Yin Yu could only turn around silently and continue digging the hole with the Earthmaster shovel. The group continued onwards as the path was dug. Oh, okay, all right. So he's the Waning Moon officer. We all know it now. Yes, Pei Ming still had the brother of his friend in mind, and asked, since Hua Changzhu managed to get the Earthmaster shovel, does this mean the two lords communicate with each other? I recall when I asked His Highness at the time, His Highness excused my lord and said my lord wasn't close with the Blackwater demon Jean, and for sure didn't know about his whereabouts. If it's possible, will you give that demon Jean a shout and ask him to please release Qingzhong if he hasn't killed him yet? However, Hua Cheng replied, you're mistaken. It's true I don't know the Blackwater's whereabouts. Then where did the shovel come from? I found it on the ground, Hua Cheng said. Which could very well be true. Heshang could have been like, bye, I don't need it anymore. So he was going to stubbornly admit to nothing, what to do. No one could do anything to him, and under the current circumstances, everyone depended on him too, so Pei Ming could only snort. All right, fine. Hua Changzhu certainly is lucky to be able to come across a spiritual device so easily. Ling Wen, who was being carried on Peisu's back, said out of habit, this sacred shovel belongs to heavenly officials of the upper court. Will Hua Changzhu return? It needs to go back to the lost and found. However, before he finished, he realized he was no longer actively in office in the upper court, and there was no need for him to collect a debt on his behalf, so he shut up. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead and was just wondering whether he should ask after it secretly when he heard Hua Cheng speak softly, using a voice only he could hear. The Blackwater ditched it. After he stopped disguising himself as the Earthmaster, he tossed the shovel away in the ghost city and fled. Before coming to Mount Tonglu, I thought it might be useful, so I sent for someone to grab it. I see, Xie Lian replied, and here I thought I could find out Lord Windmaster's whereabouts. This sacred shovel is perfect for dealing with the mountain spirits. San Lung really does think of everything. It's only because I gained experience from being suffocatingly chased by those mountain spirits the last time, that's all, Hua Cheng replied. Xie Lian tried in spite of himself to imagine Hua Cheng entering Mount Tonglu for the first time and charging through obstacles like a novice. Just then a few small balls of tiny silver light suddenly lit up. It was those wraith butterflies who were shimmering in the darkness, becoming guiding lights. Xie Lian hovered a palm under a small silver butterfly and looked upwards. Just what is this mountain spirit, and why do they attack us? It's hard to say what it is, Hua Cheng replied. When I first came, they'd already existed for a long time, but it's not like they were attacking us specifically. They'll try to stop anyone who wants to enter Mount Tonglu, and if they can't stop them, they will attack. Attacking indiscriminately, Xie Lian wondered. If you think about it, their purpose is exactly the same as ours. Lord Rainmaster and His Highness Qi Ying are both here in Mount Tonglu. I hope nothing will happen to them. Yin Yu had been diligent digging and opening the path, but when he heard Chan Yizhen's name, his action seemed to falter for a moment. Xie Lian noticed and glanced at him. He recalled before when he wore a mask, he had met Chan Yizhen, only at the time, Yin Yu had appeared like he didn't know him at all. If Qi Ying had known it was his Shizhong standing before him, what would have happened? Lingwen raised his head with difficulty. Your Highness Yin Yu, have you seen His Highness Qi Ying? He's come to my palace of Lingwen many times to have me help look for you. Really? Really? When you first descended, he came almost once a day. Later, there was never any news, so he came once every 3 days, then once every month, until recently he'd come at least once a year. He'd always felt there was a misunderstanding between you in regards to the Brocade Immortal affair, and wanted to hear your side of the story, so he could explain it to others. Yet there was never any sign of you, nor any communication. He fell silent and only heaved a sigh, refocusing on digging with renewed vigor. He doesn't want to talk about it anymore, Xie Lian thought. Lingwen was also perceptive as an individual and could tell this too, so he didn't say any more, leaving Yin Yu to concentrate on opening up a path. An unknown amount of time had passed before Yin Yu spoke up. Changju, Your Highness, we've dug for about 30 miles. Do we continue? That Earthmaster shovel worked its magic like the winds and progressed to the ground as if it was cutting tofu, leaving not a single mound of shredded earth behind. Since the group of them ran like they were fleeing, they moved faster than when they were above ground, and in the blink of an eye, they had ran for more than 30 miles. Xie Lian noticed that Yin Yu also included him in this question and was confused. Oh, you don't need to ask me, he replied gently. It's all the same, Hua Cheng said. What does Gege think? Xie Lian gave it a thought. Since we're almost out of the valley, by the time the mountain spirits came crushing in, 30 miles should be far enough. Air underground isn't sufficient. If we keep going, we might get dizzy, so let's start digging upwards. Yes, sir. And he instantly changed directions, digging in a slant upwards, even erecting beautiful mud stairs as he went. This man is really outstanding as an assistant, hands quick and competent, and not a single excessive word, Xie Lian remarked inwardly. Everyone followed behind Yin Yu, and after climbing over 10 steps, Xie Lian suddenly felt he stepped on something hard and protruding from the ground. It wasn't like the rocks, and it wasn't like mud, so he looked down and crouched, using his hands to scrape at the ground. A moment later, his brows knitted slightly. Hua Cheng noticed and exclaimed, Gege, don't touch! However, it was too late. When Xie Lian stood up again, he already had dangling in each of his hands a skull. Everyone, a question. Have we dug into a mass grave? Pei Ming also pulled out a femur, sighing. Probably. Looking at the structure of this bone, it belonged to an exquisitely beautiful woman with long, slender legs. To have her bones buried here, what a shame! Shut up! Very unfortunate indeed, Hua Cheng said. The legs are long, that's for sure, but that's the bone of a man. Once Pei Ming heard it didn't belong to a woman, he lost interest and tossed the femur away. Hua Cheng added, to say more accurately, it's the bones of a man who was deformed after turning into a ghost. So there must be some corpse poison on it. Pei Ming opened his palms, and sure enough, areas where his hands had touched the bone were now oozed a green corpse aura. Can you manage to keep your hands to yourself? Can you? Lingwen berated. Corpse poison won't do any harm. General is a heavenly official. After all, it'll be fine after a while, Pei Su said. Truthfully, that femur wasn't just slender, it was also rather sturdy. It was robust and light when swung, so Pei Ming picked it back up, wrapping the end tip with a cloth to hold it, looking like he planned to use it as a weapon. Your Highness, how come you're fine holding those two heads? Xie Lian gently put down the two skulls and showed his hands to the others. Turns out his palms were also radiating green, but the green was rapidly fading. Truth be told, I've been poisoned by corpses many times. At least 800 times, if not 1,000. So I'm quite immune to it now. This level of poison is still manageable. Hearing this explanation, everyone thought it was silly for some reason and wanted to laugh. Hua Cheng, however, did not seem very happy. He walked over and stepped on the skulls and crushed them to pieces. Xie Lian was at ease at first, but after he heard the violent, furiously brutal sound of bones being crushed, he intuitively sensed that Hua Cheng was upset. He wanted to ask what was going on, but somehow he felt himself seemed to be the cause of him being upset. While he was stunned, he didn't dare to pry further. A moment later, Hua Cheng demanded, his voice flat, what's taking so long? He's not happy that Xie Lian was poking fun at himself for suffering, right? Hua Cheng doesn't like that. The distance from the tunnel to the surface of the ground should be no more than 6 meters. Even if the distance might be slightly longer since they were digging in a slant, it shouldn't have taken this long. Yin Yu was also baffled. I'm confused too. Wait, it's done. It's been dug through. Right after Hua Cheng's inquiry, the Earthmaster's shovel dug through to the surface and Yin Yu cleared a large hole, leaping out. First, we're out? The others climbed out. However, the moment the feet stepped on the surface of the ground, they were all puzzled. We're back above ground? Well, that's not right. What is this place? The place where they'd come out was definitely not on the surface of the ground, since the light was extremely dim. Lingwen commented, since it was still day when we were walking through the valley, there's no reason why the sky would turn this dark so fast. A few wraith butterflies flew out, were shimmering and circled around the area. The group finally saw clearly just where they were. This was an enormously large cave, empty and spacious, the dome extremely high up and wide, like an ink-black night sky. All around were numerous small caves, and each cave led a different direction. Xie Lian was amazed. Is this place man-made or naturally formed? Naturally formed. Even though he still answered Xie Lian's every question, Xie Lian still kept in mind that little moment earlier. The point we picked to dig upwards earlier happened to be right under this mountain. We've dug into this mountain. I see. Well, then let's hurry and find an exit. But which way? That was the question of the hour. Other than those small caverns that no person could crawl through, there were still at least 7 or 8 other cavities that could allow for people to pass through. Xie Lian hugged his arms and contemplated. Pesu said, break up into groups, it's the fastest way. No. I like that Xie Lian's like, no. Breaking up is the worst thing to do in this situation. If there should be anything hiding in the shadows, it'd be too easy to ambush us. I'd rather take the time and find the right path than divide our power. Pei Ming held that new weapon made of a femur in his hands. He seemed to have gotten addicted to swinging it and spoke his phone. Well, let's move together. Let's go this way first. Thus, the group picked a path and moved together. Hua Cheng and Xie Lian took the lead at the very front. After walking silently for a while, Xie Lian tried testing the waters and whispered, so long. He seemed to have long since come around and answered, does Gege have any questions? Xie Lian felt it'd be awkward to ask if he was angry earlier and replied offhandedly, no, it's nothing, just this tunnel's all winding and twisted like intestines. I'm a little dizzy. Then do you want to take a break? He didn't sound like he was joking at all. Oh, no need, no need. Behind him, Pei Ming piped, did I hear that right? Your Highness, you get dizzy from a little walking? Xie Lian also felt his offhand reply just now was somewhat embarrassing, like he was forcibly making conversation, so he pretended like he didn't hear Pei Ming's comment. He spoke solemnly, everyone do follow closely. This tunnel has many turns and corners, so it's easy for things to happen. As he spoke, he turned his head back to look, and he instantly stopped from shock, grabbing Hua Cheng to stop him too. San Long! What is it? Hua Cheng asked and turned to look back too, and then he also frowned. There was no one behind them. Right before he spoke, Pei Ming was still not far behind them, teasing, yet now in the dark of the cave, it was empty except for the 2 of them. Hua Cheng immediately gripped Xie Lian's shoulders, his voice dark. Gege, stay close to me, don't run off anywhere. Is there something hiding in this mountain? No. But it's precisely because there's nothing that it's worrisome. And because this meant there was something that could come close under their radar and kidnap everyone away. Oh, damn it! No! Oh! Okay, one more chapter! Buried together alive. No resting peace in the earth. What? Oh, no! There's no way it could steal behind us and do something major without us noticing. Even if Xie Lian didn't believe his own ability to observe, he believed in Hua Cheng's. Besides, when it came to gut instincts for danger, he honestly didn't trust himself quite a bit. He did trust himself quite a bit. Let's retrace our steps and see, Hua Cheng said. The 2 walked side by side and returned the way they came, turning and rounding corners in the cave for a while before they came to a stop. It wasn't that they voluntarily stopped. Rather, there was no more path to go on, and they were forced to stop. Even though the tunnel was winding and full of turns, it was still only just the one path, yet now, before they even reached the starting point, there was a cold, hard stone wall that appeared out of nowhere. Is this an illusion or is this real? A silver butterfly languidly flew over and tapped lightly on the rugged stone wall. It was nothing out of place, but it was forced back. It's real. Well, then this is troublesome. There were usually 2 types of demonic walls. The first type was made one see an illusion, meaning that one would just think there was a wall when there actually wasn't. This type was easy to get rid of. Just touch it or give yourself a slap, pour a bucket of cold water, and wake up and go touch it. The second muddled one's sense of direction and memories of the path. This type was a little more powerful. For example, at a fork in the road, when you thought you'd chosen the left, in reality your mind was confounded and you might actually went right instead. And the so-called devil's roundabout boiled down to nothing but a small trick. When people step with their left and right feet, there's naturally a slight deviation between the steps, and inhuman creatures can confound one's mind to widen the deviation. Thus, without knowing, when you thought you'd been walking a straight line, in reality you're walking in a large circle. Once you rounded back to where you started, you'd be puzzled. Well, how did I end up here again? To the 2 of them, both methods were but meager tricks. And for this cold stone wall before them, it was the 3rd type. It was real. Xie Lian was just thinking whether he should brutishly punch through the wall to see what was behind it when he heard Gege spoke up. Gege, give me your hand. Although puzzled, he still obediently gave Hua Cheng his hand. Hua Cheng gently grasped his hand and held it in his palm, the other hand hovering over like he was putting something on him. Xie Lian held his breath for a moment, and soon after he raised his hand, curious. This is... On the third finger of his left hand was a very thin red string. And it was Hua Cheng who had personally tied it on him. The red string also extended out long and ceaselessly connecting with the red string knotted around Hua Cheng's finger. Hua Cheng raised his own hand and showed him the tiny red butterfly knot that was now identical on both their fingers. He smiled. Now we're joined together. Ah! Okay. Hearing this, Xie Lian could feel his face grow hot. Maybe he was a little too self-conscious. He hurriedly rubbed his face, scared that Hua Cheng might notice his heart was beating faster than normal. He smiled back. Is this some sort of spell? He straightened his expression and dropped his hand, even though we won't be separating voluntarily, but just in case. This string won't break and won't grow shorter. If the string doesn't break, then it means the person on the other end is all right. Unless the person is no more, otherwise the string will for sure lead to the other. What do you mean no more? Xie Lian said. Dead or dissipated. He was about to speak when suddenly the faint sounds of tremors came from a distance. Is someone throwing fists? Oh my gosh. Married officially. The power and frequency. It was as if someone was throwing punches heavily at the body of the mountain. Xie Lian remarked, this power could definitely belong to a mortal. It must be a martial god. Could it be General Pei? It's coming from ahead of us, Hua Cheng observed. This ahead naturally meant the way they intended to head in, but had to turn back because Pei Ming and the others disappeared halfway. However, Pei Ming and the others disappeared from behind them, so how could they suddenly reappear ahead? It wasn't Pei Ming, then who could it be? The two exchanged a look and walked side by side, ready to check things out. However, halfway down the path, the mountain-punching sound suddenly disappeared. It was unknown whether it was intentional or because the energy fueling it had been depleted. But since they'd come this far, why would they turn back? Thus, Xie Lian and Hua Cheng continued to walk in the direction the sound had come from. A few silver butterflies danced in the bluish darkness of the cave ahead of them, lighting the way. Suddenly, Xie Lian sharply caught sight of something odd on the stone wall on the side. What's that, a red string? From afar, they really couldn't tell what it was, but it was exceedingly bizarre. It looked like a red string, but much thicker. It kept twisting, appearing more like a long red worm. He approached and looked closely. Is this Banyu's scorpion snake? Sure enough, it was the bottom half of one of the red wine scorpion snakes, twisting and throwing its body. Its upper body seemed to be buried in the stone wall. Did it crawl into a hole or get out? Probably not. This scorpion snake's entire body was hung in midair. Snakes don't climb walls, so how could it have slithered to such a height before crawling into a hole? Besides, there were many holes on the stone wall, so if it must slither, why pick such a small one? The hole was also strange. It was almost exactly the same shape as the snake's body, which was why it was trapped so completely. Xie Lian had wanted to grab a hold of the snake and pull it out to sea, but the snake was abnormally alert, swinging its tail madly, randomly pricking, almost stinging Xie Lian. Thus, Hua Cheng flicked it. It looked like he did so very casually, but that snake seemed to have been shocked by it and became too stunned to move. Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry and was about to speak when suddenly he closed his mouth. Did you hear that? I hear it, Hua Cheng said. The two looked ahead at the same time. In the darkness, there was a sound of low breathing, very steady, very calm. Two wraith butterflies dallied and danced around each other and fluttered towards the breathing sound, flying higher and higher. The silver light was also lifting higher. Gradually, a pair of hands were illuminated. It was the hands of a person. The hands of a man. The back of the hands were spotted with blood, covered in gashes, drooping down like the dead's. Going further up, the messy head of a person was illuminated, and the head was drooping as if dead. However, there was no lower body. That's right, this person who was hung so highly upon the stone wall didn't have a lower body. He only bared an upper body, like he was grown straight out of the stone wall. In the past, Xie Lian had seen some nobles and aristocrats who, when they'd successfully hunted rare game, would cut off the game's head, treat it with a chemical solution to prevent it from rotting, and hang it on the walls of their residence. The sight before him now reminded him of the head of tigers, bucks, wolves, and other such beasts that were hung on the walls neatly in a row. But this man was still clearly breathing, and so he was alive. What is this creature? Is this the true body of the mountain spirit? However, there was no response coming next to him. He felt his heart go cold. He whipped his head around, and sure enough, Hua Cheng was gone. "So long!" Xie Lian exclaimed. Naturally, no one answered, but the man hung on the wall mumbled like he was talking in his sleep, about to wake. Under the current circumstances, however, Xie Lian had not a bit of interest in him. He turned around and circled twice, standing where he was, and suddenly he remembered the red string tied around his finger and raised it in cheer. Sure enough, the red string was still there, unbroken. Thus, Xie Lian relaxed a bit, and he picked up the red string, pulling it as he walked. He walked and reached the end of the thread. And the other end of the string was linked into a stone wall. Xie Lian couldn't believe it. He yanked it twice, but the more the red string was pulled out incessantly from within the stone, it made him wonder, was Hua Cheng actually inside the stone wall at this very moment? When he thought that might be a possibility, without other words, Xie Lian raised Feng Shen and was ready to shatter the wall, yet unexpectedly, the tip of his sword didn't even touch the wall of the stone when his sight suddenly went black. As if the stone wall before him suddenly opened a giant mouth, it howled and swallowed his entire person whole. What? The blackness didn't go away quickly. And as Xie Lian was swallowed, it grew darker and darker. All around was sand and mud crushing at him, exceedingly suffocating. The sand and mud was moving endlessly, the feeling like he was being swallowed in the stomach of a giant monster. And the monster had also eaten a bunch of other things besides him, tumbling everything into its stomach, trying to digest. It also felt like he had sunk into quicksand, unable to exert power, though he had the strength. And the more he tried to struggle, the deeper he'd sink. Xie Lian wanted to break the wall to escape, but then he thought perhaps Hua Cheng could be in here. So instead of backing out, he moved forward, swinging his arms to break away the earth and sand as he pulled at the red string to continue onwards. Just then a hand suddenly stretched out, seizing his wrist without fault, and Xie Lian was alarmed. Who? The moment he opened his mouth, it was filled with a mouthful of mud, and he spat it out miserably. As for the hand, it clutched him and pulled, pulling him into someone's arms, a familiar voice coming from above. Gege, it's me! Hearing that voice, Xie Lian's entire person relaxed. He hugged the other tightly, blurting, "Oh, thank goodness the red string didn't break. I really did find you." Hua Cheng embraced him back tightly, speaking with conviction. "It didn't break. I found you too." Oh, shut up! Turns out the weird incident that happened to the two was the same. Xie Lian was observing that half-bodied man hung on the wall, and Hua Cheng was keeping an eye on their surroundings, guarding against anything that might ambush them from the shadows. Yet unexpectedly, it only took a blink of an eye for Xie Lian, who was standing next to him, to disappear. A stone wall erected out of nowhere, standing in his stead. Hua Cheng pulled at the red string, searching as he followed, and discovered the ends were linked to the wall, so he went in directly to look for Xie Lian. In truth, from the very beginning, there was just the extra wall separating them. Both had thought the other was within the wall, so they both went in at the same time. Xie Lian repeated again for the umpteenth time mentally that Hua Cheng really thought of everything. Thank goodness we're linked by a red string, otherwise, who knows if we'd find each other. No wonder General Pan and the others disappeared so abruptly. So it wasn't anyone who ambushed, but rather, they were swallowed by the mountain spirit. That's right, Hua Cheng said. We didn't pick a good spot, and ended up digging right into the stomach of the mountain spirit. That's right, they were currently, no doubt, in the stomach of one of the three mountain spirits. At the time when Yin Yu asked Xie Lian whether to dig upwards, the chosen location just happened to be the resting place of the mountain spirits, and Xie Lian cheerfully agreed. His luck truly was completely out of this world, no lie. The sand and mud from all around were crushing their space, squishing tighter and tighter, becoming more and more suffocating. Xie Lian felt they shouldn't stay in that place any longer. Well, how do we get out now? Hua Cheng replied, "It got dug through the bottom, so it's not very happy. It's trying to digest us at the moment, so it's a bit troublesome. But rest assured, Gege, we'll get out eventually." Then he joked, "To die buried together probably feels like this." Oh, same quilt when alive, same cave grave when dead. This is a verse from the Propitious Pavilion of Romance, one of the tales recorded in the book of Mao Qingping's Hall Novella Collection. It's one of the oldest recorded novella collections in Chinese history. The verse describes a married couple who are intimately in love. When Hua Cheng said to die buried together, he was quoting the second half of this verse, which basically has the same sentiment as "not even death shall part us." When Xie Lian heard, he was slightly taken aback, but the corners of his lips actually curved upwards. When he noticed, he hastily suppressed it. "Oh my God, just admit that you love him, damn it! Just admit it!" The half-bodied man outside was probably also swallowed by the mountain spirit. The mountain punching sound we heard must be him trying to escape, pounding at the stone walls. He and that scorpion snake are the same. They weren't swallowed fully, and they were only half devoured. Which was why the effect was exceedingly creepy. But he's not someone from the party that came to Mount Tonglu with us, Hua Cheng pointed out. Wait, I know who that was. It was probably Qi Ying. Oh, the one with the curly hair. I wonder if he's all right. Did he pass out? He seemed to have lost consciousness earlier. He's fine, just asleep. Well, how do you know? I left a few silver butterflies outside, Hua Cheng said. I sent one over just now. My right eye can see the present situation outside. Just as the words left his lips, he, seeming to have seen something strange. What's happened outside? Hua Cheng didn't say anything, only bowed his head slightly, gently lifting Xie Lian's chin as the two touched foreheads. Xie Lian's eyes widened, but then he closed his eyes and reopened his eyes. This is truly magical. His right eye seemed to see a scene completely different than what was before him. Although still dark, he could see the general silhouettes of things. Oh, he's looking through Hua Cheng's eye. This silver butterfly was monitoring the external world, seemed to be hiding behind a bunch of weeds. Below was seen a black shadow was slowly approaching. Someone's come. I wonder who it is. Where is your silver butterfly hiding? Would it be discovered? It's in his hair, Hua Cheng said. The light is hidden. It won't be discovered. The black shadow finally approached close enough and lifted his head, his face pale white. Yin Yu. Oh my gosh! Oh, y'all! Oh! God! I think the funniest part about these chapters is that the one unresolved plot point that I don't have on here is the one we get resolved in this set of chapters, which is Yin Yu is the waiting moon officer. We get confirmation that yes, Yin Yu is Hua Cheng's errand boy and has been working with him for reasons. We don't exactly know why. I guess we can add Yin Yu to this somewhat. Maybe, I don't know. You know, unresolved plot points. I guess, does it matter that we know why Yin Yu is working with Hua Cheng? I mean, Hua Cheng, the thing about it is established in this set of chapters that Yin Yu is a very efficient and diligent worker. He does things, which makes me very suspicious about this whole Brocade Immortal thing. I guess we do need to put that on here. We need to put the whole thing with the Brocade Immortal. There's been so much happening in these chapters. I forgot that Xie Ying was even associated with the Brocade Immortal. That's how much has happened. That is how much has happened in this dang volume. I forgot that Xie Ying was even associated with the Brocade Immortal. Forgot all about it. I was like, wait, Brocade Immortal, Xie Ying? Oh yeah! Just, he's got a connection to it, right? So there is like a whole string where like Ling Wen, Pei Ming. So I mean, I guess we could go ahead and say up here that you have the Brocade Immortal, old Bai Ying up here, and you have them tied somewhat to Xie Ying, but then also tied to Yin Yu, and they're tied together because they're, you know, former companions and, you know, Superior and Kohei, Senpai and Kohai, and then you have Ling Wen that is also tied to Pei Ming, who's tied to Baijing via Julie, and then they're all tied to the Rainmaster, who's tied to Xie Lian. It's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees of Xie Lian, and in this case, it's like 6 degrees of the Brocade Immortal. Like, who all can we wrangle in that all know each other through the Brocade Immortal? So, I guess we're just going to put Brocade Immortal somewhat on here, but we do know where Xie Ying is now. They're stuck in the mountain. It wasn't easy. For a second, I had this theory as I was reading. For a second, I had this theory that the trophy of the person hung up on side of the mountain, and we know it's Xie Ying now. The person that I thought it was hanging up inside of the mountain spirit, I thought maybe that was the mountain spirit's actual body, and they were just trapped there and the spirit was exuding from them or something. No, it's just Xie Ying that's trapped there like the scorpion snake. And again, the way that Hua Cheng works, you devilish man, you. He's like, I'm gonna get Xie Lian to like press his forehead against mine and look through my eye to see what I see through the butterflies, which is Xie Ying. You just want to get as close to Xie Lian as you could, Hua Cheng. And we don't blame you, right? We don't blame you. But I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah. So there's that. But yeah, so we know where Xie Ying is now. They're basically on the outside of the mountain spirit as Hua Cheng and Xie Lian are being digested. And Yin Yu has shown back up. So I'm hopeful that next chapter set, which we're going to be looking at chapters 159 and 162, back to our 59, 60. We're back to 4 chapters again, 4 chapters, y'all, 40 pages. So much. But I'm hopeful that next set of chapters we will get answers to the Brocade Immortal and Xie Lian, at least with Yin Yu. And I'm going to put on here, God and Yin Yu. Forgot all about him. And Yin Yu and their whole deal. So hopefully, I'm hopeful next week we'll get to mark that off of the unresolved plot points. We'll get to mark that one off there and go through it. But honestly, there's a lot happening in these chapters. Again, I get such labyrinth vibes the whole time that the divine temple was crumbling. I was thinking of the movie Labyrinth. I was thinking of the goblins throwing rocks and boulders down at Sarah and the others as they try to make their way. Because essentially this is like Labyrinth. It's just like the 1980s movie. It's like the Jim Henson, George Lucas 1980s movie, where the closer we get to the center where Jareth is, the closer we get to Mount Tonglu and the center of the kiln, the crazier it gets, right? So that's so fascinating. I'm so intrigued about the mountain spirits and what those all mean. We'll talk about it with these chapters, but we don't really get a lot answered here, except we do find out that the Earthmaster's shovel is no longer with Heshan. Why would it be? The moment that Hua Cheng was like, oh, he just discarded it, I fully believed him, because I was like, yeah, Heshan's got his revenge. Why does he have to pose as the Earthmaster anymore? Everybody knows he's not the Earthmaster, so what point does it make? And Heshan was pretty garbage with it, so not as good as Yin Yu, apparently. But yeah, so we just find out that Hua Cheng has no clue where Heshan is. Who knows? But we do find out that Yin Yu is the Waning Moon officer that's been working for Hua Cheng, and that they're tied to this whole Brocade Immortal deal, whatever it may be. But we don't have any other... All of these unresolved plot points are still as they've been. Nothing has changed. And we're going to put the murals in Wuyong. We will expand upon that, though. I think it is important that we talk about the murals, because we do get some stuff with them with this second mural, which we're going to talk about. And I love the idea that as we get closer and deeper into Mount Tonglu, we're going to find more and more murals that will tell us more and more of the secrets. I'm really excited about that. I'm all for it. But yeah, there was a lot happening in these chapters, and we just need to go through it. I was like, oh my gosh. So I just love the idea that Hua Cheng at the very last second was like, oh, well, I was going to have it rain down blood, but then I saw you were there, and I was like, oh, can't have that. So at the last minute, I changed to flowers. Just what a card. What a card. I love it. And so I like the idea that they are going to take the robe off of Ling Wen. That makes sense. Taking the robe off of Ling Wen makes perfect sense. But the fact that it bites back and Hua Cheng, I like that Hua Cheng does not ever tell anybody how to do anything. He's just like, and even when they were all like, that was a very Star Wars moment. Like if you've ever seen Star Wars A New Hope, the original Star Wars movie, there's a scene where like they're in a trash compactor and it's slowly caving in. Everything that was happening, I was having Star Wars flashbacks. I was picturing Pei Ming as Han Solo, just like, Pei Ming kind of is Han Solo. Isn't he though? I feel like Pei Ming and Hua Cheng both could be Han Solo in this story. I mean, Hua Cheng has the, I'm just waiting for Xie Lian to go, I love you, and San Long is like, I know. Like, I'm just waiting for that moment to happen. I'm waiting for that Han Solo and Princess Leia moment, and Xie Lian's in all white like Princess Leia. We just need, Xie Lian's hair to be up in the double buns. Hua Cheng just needs to have the big, tall, thigh-high boots and the blaster. I mean, I could believe it, right? As far as that goes, as far as the romance between Han Solo and Leia goes, it's Hua Lian for sure. I love you, I know. But as far as being like kind of a womanizer and kind of schmoozy, I mean, that fits Pei Ming to a T. So, and in Star Wars, they get stuck in the trash compactor and it keeps like getting closer and closer, and Xie Lian, or Luke Skywalker, however you want to put it, has to find a way to stop it. And so I really loved that the whole time that was happening, Hua Cheng was just like, yeah, he's on his way. He's going to be here soon. Don't you worry. Like, not even trying to help. Like, Hua Cheng, that is one thing. Xie Lian forgives Hua Cheng for many things. For many things. Xie Lian's over here like, these butterflies are so cute as they're destroying the world. But Hua Cheng Hua Cheng knows that something good is going to happen, but he makes no attempt to help out at all. Like, he's just like, oh, I know we're going to be fine. It's okay. Which is interesting. Because, like, as Pei Ming gets bit by the robe, Hua Cheng is like, yeah, the Brocade Immortal's not going to let go of Ling Wen, so you're not going to take it off him, just so you know, after he gets bit, right? And he's like, yeah. And I love that General Pei, he's like, well, my Lord Ghost King, couldn't you warn me sooner? And Hua Cheng's like, yeah, that was great. And so then poor Banyu, though, it was really sad that Pei Ming got mad at Banyu and was like, this is your fault. And Banyu's like, I'm sorry. And I love that Pei Su's like, it's okay. It's not your fault. Again, I could ship Pei Su and Banyu all day long. And Pei Ming does say, he's like, she's not an innocent little girl anymore. She's centuries old. She's a woman. Girl, she may be petite, but she's a woman. And I was like, just let me have my Pei Su Banyu ship, please. And thank you. But I like got chills the moment we find out the mural disappeared. That it's just by magic. It's just there to be seen once and then it vanishes. I'm like, that is some creepy next level stuff right there. So we get the idea that the murals vanish. The murals vanish and that they are magic, which is creepy. And I think that the part that's creepy about it is that the fact that we've established that they're magic and that once they're seen, they leave and that they're being planted all over the place, that gives me the idea. I know they said that the murals seem like they were centuries old instead of like a millennia, but what if they're newer than that? What if the person that painted the mural is there? What if that's a thing? What if the ghost of Shanla is the white-clad ghost that was killing thousands of other ghosts? And what if they've been making the murals? I'm not about it. I'm not about it. I'm like, no, that gives me chills. That makes me very creeped out. I don't know. So I don't know what to think, right? I don't. We'll talk about this. So we're going to talk about this. But yeah. So they're walking along and Pei Su gets mad at Banyu and then they reach the small valley and then they manage to find the shrine. But before that, they talk about the kiln. And so I'm glad they touched base that Qi Ying just got separated from Ling Wen when they first entered Mount Tonglu. She's not sure where he is at. We find out he's in the mountain. That all gets resolved in this chapter. But they talk about the kiln. And I'm going to put the kiln up here. That it's described as a giant stove, right? But the kiln, the crazy thing is that the kiln is atop this blue mountain that has ice and snow. A song of fire and ice, right? Has ice and snow, and then it erupts with lava when a supreme is created. So that's interesting, right? That it erupts with lava when a supreme is created. I'm like, ugh. So, but that's kind of cool. Like, I was not, like, when you think of kiln, you think of it being this fire. So seeing this mountain covered in snow and ice, I'm like, is it an illusion? Is it magic? It just was not what I was expecting. And it's huge and, like, rises up into the heavens. So there's that, too. It's exceedingly, like, just expansive and immersive and very ominous and threatening, right? And it's at the heart of everything. And so it is born accompanied by blazing fires, lava, and ruinous disasters. So I find that interesting that you have, when a supreme ghost is born, this volcanic eruption and lava and fire and disasters happening. But then, in the same token, when a mortal ascends to be a heavenly official, you have disasters, eruptions, thunder, and lightning. Kind of the same thing, right? I mean, whenever Xie Lian ascended, Function's entire palace was destroyed. So it's like, the similarities and parallels, it's not lost on me, right? They're very similar, right? Again, tying to that theory that the creation of the Supreme Ghosts is to mirror the ascension of heavenly officials, only it's like the Negaverse version of it, right? And then Xie Lian says every time Mount Tonglu opens its gates, it's like an arduous childbirth. And Hua Cheng says that metaphor is ingenious, but then he doesn't know where the mountain that gives birth is at. And I'm like, that's Mount Tonglu, right? Mount Tonglu is the mountain that gives birth. So that's interesting. So yeah, they all decide to go and look if there's any murals. And Hua Cheng says that the temple seems like it's safe. And that's when they find the mural. They were completely different from the previous one. Okay, so the previous mural, let's talk about the first mural. The first mural, it seems like the murals are telling a story, right? The first mural shows like the crowned prince. And it seems like the crown prince had appointed 4 generals, which we could take the 4 generals to be that's interesting. Okay, so what if we're gonna expand on this, just thinking about it. What if the 4 generals are the east, the north, the south, and the west? What if the 4 generals are actually like the 4 original gods of each of the directions? And what if the crowned prince was like the first June Woo prototype? I mean, this is kind of tweaking the theory from last week, but if we're thinking of it in a different way, you could think that maybe the crown prince, and this was just like the people worshipped the crown prince as like the original Junwoo. That could be interesting, that like the original crown prince was like the original Junwoo, and you have the 4 directions, you have the 4 generals. That could be kind of cool. All right, and then we have all the people below them that are worshiping them. Okay, so we have that. But then we have, on the second mural, things get a little bit different, right? And the second mural shows the crowned prince has ascended. So they've become a heavenly official, and they're on this jade throne, or they say it's a divan. And they say that they're on a jaded futon, his brows quietly handsome, and his eyes were shut tightly, and judging from his posture, he was in deep reflective meditation, but it wasn't tranquil. So instead, he's worried. He's worried, and he's surrounded by his 4 generals, and it says they are deeply concerned. Okay, so they're deeply concerned, and then he's having this dream. So whoever the crown prince is, he's having a dream, and the dream is of the mortal realm. And there's lava and fire. Let's see this. Looking on here, looking downward, and then a field of chaotic red. And it says the houses and trees, it says they were submerged in a vast, endless sea of fire and flowing lava. And the flames burned on people's bodies, and they were screaming. There was lava, fire, and everyone in pain. And we assume that this is Wuyang. Okay. So, yeah, this is the meaning of the mural is the volcano eruption, or at least it's a vision of it happening, right? That this is the fall of the kingdom of Wuyang. And it's like, yeah, it's a mural, it's a dream. It's basically, it seems to be like a peek into the future. He says some heavenly officials possessed enormous spiritual might, and their talents were abnormally incredible, and they saw minuscule omens that could peek into the future in their dreams. Prophecy dreams. Had this dream state when the king of Wulong fell. Yeah, someone wanted to tell something. The story could be a continuation of the previous one. So maybe they were seeing in the future. Now, see, this is where I get a little bit sad, because now it's pointing to where, like, if the Goshi was the crown prince, that would make a lot of sense, because the Goshi could tell fortunes. He could see into people's futures, right? And tell how people were based on what he saw of them. And it would make sense if he could see the future, and he saw in his visions, because he said Xie Lian, he's seen Xie Lian's future, and it's pitch black. And so, because, yeah, now it's making more sense. Now, I'm getting so frustrated. Now, because, yeah, I'm like, oh, did this surprise just get ruined? Because, yeah, it would make sense. Because if the crown prince was the Goshi of Shanla, and he can see the future, and that's carried down. But then there are some questions, though. There are some questions, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, this does seem like a similar situation to Shanla. Like, Xie Lian ascended, and then he saw that Shanla was in trouble, and he was debating on stepping in and getting involved, and Mooching and Fu Yao were Mooching and Feng Shin were like, no, don't do it. You have other things you should be doing. And Xie Lian's like, no, I'm going to get involved. And then it led to the downfall of Shanla via the human face disease, right? So that seems to be paralleled here, where the Crown Prince, he was sitting there worried about Wu Yong being surrounded by fire and flames and destruction, and it seemed like the generals were like, well, don't get involved. You know, it goes back to Jun Wu saying, like, don't get involved, you know, it's beyond you. Maybe this Crown Prince kind of was like Xie Lian and was like, but I could save my people. That does bring about an interesting point, though, because if he's worried in the dream about the fires destroying Wu Yong, there are a couple questions that come along with this. Question 1, did Mount Tonglu already exist? If that's the case. If the Crown Prince is looking down on Wu Yong and worried about fires and eruptions, does that mean that Mount Tonglu already existed? Or is this a preview of its creation? Was his dream foreshadowing that the Mount Tonglu was going to get created and then destroy Wu Yong? I mean, but they've said Bai Wusheng was not a supreme ghost that came from Mount Tonglu. They haven't said that outright. They said it's definitely Blackwater and Hua Cheng, but I mean, could Bai Wusheng have been the first to come out of Mount Tonglu and destroyed Wu Yong, and whoever this Crown Prince was, which could be the ghost of Shanla, was one to face him? I'm gonna be mad. If that spoiled me on this surprise, I'm gonna be very mad. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully, y'all, it's not the case and he's not, but now my mind is like, that comment has like tainted my mind. And so now all I can think of is, well, maybe it is him. I guess it is. So I don't know. It's ruined my theorizing powers are limited now because I'm very, very frustrated and worried about what's to come. So I'm like, ugh, this is why these comments hurt. Because now I don't want to theorize because I don't know if I'm right or wrong. And I'm like, well, have I been completely wrong the last 2 episodes? The last 2 sets? Have I been completely wrong? I don't know if I should be theorizing or not. I don't know. I'm like, it makes me so mad. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know if it is, did Mount Tonglu already exist? I don't know. So yeah, did Mount Tonglu already exist? Is this foreshadowing the creation of Bai Wusheng? I don't know. I don't want to theorize any more about it because I'm just making myself mad. I don't know. Anyway, so we've got lots of things to theorize, but the one cool thing is that it seems like we are learning more as we go through this about the mural, right? We are learning more about this. Now, I don't know what we're going to get out of the 4 generals. I don't know if it's going to tell us like what happened with this. Maybe the 4 generals, maybe the Crown Prince, and if we're still going with the Bai Wusheng. See, now my problem is the Bai Wusheng thing seems less likely, and it seems more like the Goshi of Shanla is the Crown Prince that became the ascended heavenly official that was declined and came back down to Shanla to help warn Xie Lian about what's happening. That's what it seems more like, but I don't know. It could be that the Crown Prince did ascend, and maybe the 4 generals betrayed him. Maybe the Crown Prince was going to go down to Wu Yong and do something, and they were like, no, you can't get involved. And he decided that he would, and then he did, and they betrayed him. I don't know. I don't want to theorize anymore because it's just going to make me mad. Anyway, Xie Lian thinks it's a dream. Was this how the kingdom of Wu Yong fell? Had this dream state of His Highness the Crown Prince become reality? There's someone who wants to tell us something. The story in this mural should be a continuation from the previous one. The closer we get to the kiln, the more we'll get our questions answered. The question, I guess, with this is why? Why do the murals want to tell Xie Lian anything? It seems like Xie Lian's the only one concerned with the murals, and the murals only want Xie Lian to find out about them somewhat. So why? Who knows? The creepy thing about all of this, honestly, beyond the past and whatever it is, the creepy thing about it is we don't know, one, how does this person know that Xie Lian's looking at the murals? That's creepy. Is it one of those things where once you unearth it, it's only available for like 10 minutes and then it disappears? Is that the case? I could see that. Like, that maybe once you unearth the mural, it was only going to be open for like 10 minutes and it was going to disappear. But then there's the risk of, well, whoever finds it, then how do you know that Xie Lian? Or maybe that doesn't matter. So the big question is, why? Why do these murals exist? Did they know Xie Lian was going to find them? How did they know Xie Lian was going to find them? And if they didn't know Xie Lian was going to find them, then why'd they leave them in the first place for just some rando to find? Like, what's the point of it? And if they do know that Xie Lian has found them, that means they're there at Mount Tonglu watching over him, and that's really creepy. So the murals are such an enigma right now. I'm so curious. And of course, MXTX gives us this, like, she baits us in the last set of chapters with the murals and is like, look at this cool thing that's a mystery. And then the beginning of these chapters, she's like, here's more of the mystery. And now she's like, bye. So it's like, no, damn it. So I don't know. It's driving me crazy. So, I don't know why. The creepy thing is we don't know why the murals are even here to begin with. Why someone's put them there, if they're wanting Xie Lian to find them, how they know Xie Lian was going to end up there, how are they watching Xie Lian, how does that work? It's all very, very creepy, right? And I don't know what to do with it. So, But yeah, so anyway, so we have the mountains closing in on them. We have the mountains closing in. And they do kind of like the Star Wars thing, really slowly climbing. I love that Pei Ming wedges himself into the mountain. He's like, if I'm going to die, it's not by these stupid mountains, so figure something out. I love that. I love that Pei Ming in a GIF can be relied upon to, like, make a move and do something good. It was great, right? I love it. I love that they just, all these boulders and mountains everything starts to crumble. The walls are caving in. They only have so much places to go. And what I love about this is that all these boulders, like MXTX describes all these boulders coming down there. And then Hua Cheng just opens up an umbrella and is like, oh, hey, no, actually, we're all okay. We're all okay. Yeah, so there was 2 images that we get shown to in this chapter set. One of them is absolutely hilarious, and that is them on the mountainside. I love Hua Cheng with the umbrella and Xie Lian. I love that Pei Ming's just down there like, I hate you all. Pei Su is helping Ling Wen, which is really sweet with the brocade immortal on. I like that Hua Cheng has subdued Ling Wen with a single butterfly on her back is subduing her from using the brocade immortal. I absolutely love it. These butterflies are like OP universal, y'all. They are like OP, right? These silver butterflies, they can clean up like HD TV style. They can, create beautiful luminescent light. They can be adorable. They can fight. They can subdue powers. They can be used for surveillance. They can be used for a lot of things. Like, these butterflies are pretty OP. I love it, right? I can see why people would be afraid of them, but then Xie Lian's like, look how cute they are, right? So I love that everybody's like, do you have umbrellas? And Hua Cheng's like, only for Xie Lian. And it's like, cue Rihanna, get her in there singing, you can stand under my umbrella. I love that in the picture too, he has his hand like around Xie Lian, like around his waist. It's absolutely amazing. So then we have the idea that there are 3 mountains near Mount Tonglu called Old Age, Sickness, and Death. But there's none called birth. Yep, in Buddhist belief, birth, old age, sickness, death are the 4 causes of physical suffering. Grief, anger, ignorance are 3 causes of mental suffering. So we have here 3 of the mountain spirits are old age, death, and what was it? Sickness. Old age, death, and sickness. Interesting. We have those. And then to combat that, and then birth is over here. Birth is the other one. It's like once you're born, you're dying, basically. That's the old adage. And then you have greed. I'll put here greed, anger, and ignorance. That's really interesting because I'm very curious about the mental suffering and physical suffering. I mean, birth we can put over here, but we have old age, death, sickness, greed, anger, and ignorance. So I'm wondering, physical and mental suffering, if these can connect to any of our other calamities that we have, our other supreme ghosts, or you put Qi-Rong in there. So you have old age, sickness, and death, greed, anger, and ignorance of how they came to be, right? So if we were tied with this, I mean, sickness, I would think Bai Wu Sheng because of the human face disease, right? I would think sickness would be Bai Wu Sheng. And then you have death and old age. As far as old age and death, I mean, death, I would think of the Blackwater because his life was exchanged for the Windmasters, so maybe that was it. And then old age, maybe we're referring to Qi-Rong because maybe Qi-Rong died of old age. Who knows? Maybe he died of old age and then came back a vengeful spirit. I will just put a question mark by that. And then you have greed, anger, and ignorance. I mean, as far as greed and anger and ignorance goes, anger I would tie to the Blackwater because he was angry at his life being taken away. Greed, I feel like that goes with Qi-Rong in a way because he wanted everything. He basically wanted everything that his cousin Crown Prince had, or wanted to put him up on this pedestal and then was mad when he didn't live up to that status. But then you have ignorance. I mean, you could put Qi-Rong under ignorance too, but maybe Bai Wu Sheng fits under ignorance. Maybe Bai Wu Sheng didn't realize. Maybe he was, we don't know the full story, right? So I'm going to put a question mark by greed and ignorance. But I feel like anger and death tie with Blackwater very, very, with a Demon Jean very easily. Sickness would make sense with Bai Wu Sheng. But I don't know. It's fascinating that we have these mountains, right? And then we have birth. I think Mount Tonglu would be birth, and you have the 3 mountain spirits, but I don't know. Don't know how exactly that works. But yeah, they managed to get out. They managed to hold off the mountains coming together and colliding just in time for the Earthmaster's shovel to like come up there and dig them through. And then they come down and see that it's Yin Yu. Now, the funny thing about all this, I felt so bad for Xie Lian. I felt so badly for Xie Lian because I have been there. I am notorious for putting my foot in my mouth. Because Xie Lian's like, oh, well, you must be the Blackwater. Your face is so plain and boring. Like, there's no way that you could be an actual person. I'd forget your face in an instance. And Yin Yu's like, nope, this is my face. I did that once before. I was at an event, and my best friend and I were sitting there, and this girl in front of me had on earbuds. And she, like, would not, I was trying to ask her to do something, and she wouldn't move. And I was like, man, she's being really rude. She's like, got her headphones in and everything. And my best friend turned to me and said, that's an auditory listening device they need for their disability. And I was like, oh! just like, put foot in mouth. So I was like, oh, Xie Lian, I've been there. I know what you mean. I like that Hua Cheng's like, like just trying his best, right? Just a natural born pedestrian face. Poor Yin Yu. I guess that's helped Yin Yu though over the course. I mean, what a perfect spy though. What a perfect spy Yin Yu would be, because if you had like naturally the forgettable face, you could just go into the heavenly realm, go inside the ghost city, go wherever, sneak in and out. Nobody's gonna know. And clearly, just because you have the cursed shackle, that doesn't mean you're forbidden from going to the heavenly realm, because Xie Lian's been up there how many times? And so, yeah, I feel as though that would be a perfect disguise and a perfect means. There is still the question of why he's helping Hua Cheng, but at this point, I feel like if we don't find that out, it's not an unresolved plot point, because maybe he just helped him because I'm sure Hua Cheng gave him a reason. He seems like a diligent person that would work if you just gave him a reason to. So it's interesting, right? And so he doesn't know. What's fascinating about this is Hua Cheng does not know where the Blackwater is. He doesn't come out and say it to everyone, but he tells Xie Lian in a private communication array and was like, hey, I actually don't know where he is. He left behind the shovel. Sorry, I can't help you find your friend. Ugh. But he doesn't tell the others, because I feel like Hua Cheng definitely creates that barrier between Xie Lian and everybody else. Everybody else doesn't need to know. It's not their business. But Hua Cheng wants to stay on Xie Lian's good side and not appear to be a bad person, so he's like, oh, I'll tell Xie Lian because he needs to know that I'm not tricking him or anything, right? And Xie Lian trusts Hua Cheng, so there we go. So we find out that the mountains, they just randomly attack people. And this is when Ling Wen talks about Qi Ying, because when Qi Ying is brought up, Yin Yu is like kind of falters for a second as he's digging. And Ling Wen says, when you first descended, he came almost every day. It's like, he said, Your Highness, have you seen Qi Ying? He's come to my palace to ask for my help in searching for you. He always felt there was a misunderstanding between you two about the Brocade Immortal affair, and he wanted to hear your side of the story so he could help you explain it to the others. Oh, okay. So what we find out about Qi Ying is that Qi Ying, he believes that Yin Yu did not try to kill him with the Brocade Immortal. Okay. And it's funny that Ling Wen brings this up, because Ling Wen clearly has history with the Brocade Immortal, and it's funny that Qi Ying went to ask her for help, and she probably didn't tell it. So I don't know if Qi Ying knew that there was a connection between Ling Wen and the Brocade Immortal. He probably didn't, because he doesn't seem like that type of person that would pay that much attention to that. But it's funny that he went to her, and she's kind of like, hey, you know, he's tried to get a hold of you to clear all this up. But it seems like he believes Yin Yu didn't try to kill him and wanted to clear his name. So the question is, why didn't Yin Yu come forward then? What's the deal? What's the point? So that's kind of the big, and I'm hoping in the next chapter set we find that out. I'm hoping in the next chapter set we find that out. We know for sure what the deal is between them. So that is the question. So, but yeah, what does Gege think? You don't need to ask me, where should we go? So yeah, they decide to go up, and as they're digging up, they realize they're digging through like a graveyard. And so of course the corpses have poison on them, because corpse poison, I mean, it's MXTX. Of course there's corpse poison. Anytime a corpse is in an MXTX story is going to have corpse poison on it. Why are we surprised? But I like that Pei Ming just ends up using the femur bone as a sword. I'm like, what is happening? Like, Pei Ming's just like, oh, it's this beautiful lady's bones. Who can possibly touch it? And the moment Hua Cheng's like, that's actually a man's. He's like, no. Like with the ghost candy, he's like, nope. But then he picks it back up to use it as a sword. So I'm like, what is happening? This story, it just, the madness is escalating. It's starting to get to everyone, right? Pei Ming's using a bone femur as a sword. Why are we not surprised? And the thing about it is, with Yin Yu as well, Rongguang speaks up and brings up and is like, oh, you lost to your junior. You lost to your junior. Isn't that embarrassing? And now you're serving as a Ghost King's errand boy. And that doesn't seem to bother Yin Yu. Yin Yu's just like, The funny thing about it all is, like, Ling Wen can't speak up. She asks for the Earth Master's shovel to be returned, and then realizes, wait, I don't work in the Heavenly Realm anymore. I can't really ask that. Pei Ming is like the only actual official alongside Xie Lian that's still from around there, and I don't think Pei Ming cares. So that's kind of the funny thing, is Xie Lian doesn't care. He just wants the Wind Master back because it's his friend. It's like tears. So yeah, what's interesting here is that, like, Rongguang kind of makes fun of Yin Yu for being the errand boy, and Yin Yu doesn't seem to care. He's just kind of like, what can we do? And then when they find the corpses and everything, Xie Lian, he accidentally holds like 2 skulls in his hand, you know, like a pair of balls. And of course, and then, you know, Pei Ming taking a femur bone, you know, get all the phallic symbolism we can. He's like, well, why aren't you affected? And Xie Lian's like, oh. And then, because we haven't had it in a couple 100 pages, Xie Lian is like, oh yeah, well, it's, you know, I've been poisoned by corpses many of a time. At least 800, if not 1,000. I'm immune to it now. So this level of poison is manageable. His explanation was oddly silly, and their companions almost laughed. But Hua Cheng did not seem amused at all. He walked over and crushed the skulls to pieces under his boot. Yeah. Hua Cheng gets mad at that. And Xie Lian thinks that something he said made Hua Cheng mad. And the thing of it is, I don't think Hua Cheng's mad at what Xie Lian said, But the fact of the matter is that Xie Lian made light of all the suffering he's gone through. Like, they made it almost a joke. Like, Xie Lian's like, I've touched so many dead people that my hands are immune to the poison. That's actually heartbreaking. Like, why has he touched so many dead bodies that he's immune to the poison now? And everybody else was like, what a goofy general. And Hua Cheng's like, my Gege has suffered and you all are treating it as a joke. And more than that, Xie Lian's treating it like a joke. That's what gets Hua Cheng mad, I think. I think Hua Cheng is mad at the fact that Xie Lian is making light of his suffering and treating himself as a joke. And Hua Cheng's like, you're not a joke and neither is your suffering, so quit treating it like that. So I think that's why Hua Cheng is mad about it in the moment. And Xie Lian just, you know, it's a very intimate subject, and Xie Lian asking him about it, he doesn't want to just come out and ask it, so it just kind of, they beat around the bush with it. But then they go into this cave. They're in this cave, which turns out, again, I was thinking of Star Wars and Labyrinth. I'm thinking of the belly of the beast in Empire Strikes Back, where they have to, like, get out of it. I'm thinking of Labyrinth, where people are, like, sinking through the floors and, like, quicksand. I'm like, all of the imagery, right? And they end up in the belly of the beast. They dug straight up into the belly of the beast. So, of course, it's agitated. And it just keeps eating them, essentially. So, basically, they're going to have to kill this mountain spirit, right, to get out of there. That seems to be the case. Either kill the mountain spirit or make it agitated enough to spit everybody out. I'm a little bit worried for Pei Su, because Pei Su's immortal right now. He's not a heavenly official or a ghost, so he's probably the most at risk. That's what I'm worried about. I mean, Ling Wen has the Brocade Immortal. They're probably fine. Pei Ming is probably fine. If Qi Ying is fine. Ban Yu is probably okay. They have the Scorpion Skates. Maybe Ban Yu made like a little protective thing around Pei Su to keep him safe. I don't know. But I love the idea of, as they're walking through this mountain, they do the red string of fate. The red string of fate. It is literally the red string of fate, right? It is literally a red string of fate. It's amazing. I'm like, okay. I love that. I think it's so cute. I absolutely love it. And I just, it's so sweet and symbolic. It makes me think of Land of the Tinder, where Xie Lian took the hair and wrapped it around Hua Cheng's fingers, so that if Hua Cheng needed to come back and forth through the barrier, he could. And this is like a direct reference to that, of using the string, being like, this way we'll never be separated. But also, it's basically like wedding rings. And it's basically saying, like, we're together no matter. This string will never break unless we part. And Xie Lian's like, unless we part? And he's like, unless one of us dies, right? Because how does he say it in the English translation? He says that even though we won't separate voluntarily, this is a precaution. The red string won't break and won't grow shorter. As long as this red string remains unbroken, it means the person on the other end is all right. It will lead us to each other unless one of us is no more, dead or dissipated. Mm-hmm. And then that string, like, I love the idea that when they both get sucked in, they both, like, use the string to find each other. And that moment where he, like, where they find him there, he's like, where's that moment where they come together? He's like, a red string. Scorpion snakes, that's when they go in. I'm trying to find the exact moment, because they see a scorpion snake in the body, and then they originally see Qi Ying hanging from the wall, and then it sucks them in. And he says, Gege, it's me. I just love the idea of Xie Lian, like, in the quicksand, like, mud's, like, getting up into his lungs and everything, and he, like, spits it out and screams out San Long's name, and then San Long, like, grabs him out of the mud, and he says, Gege, it's me. He says, the red string didn't break. I really found you. And he hugged Hua Cheng, and Hua Cheng embraced him firmly back and said with conviction, it didn't break. I found you, too. Like, that's so freaking romantic. I love that so much. Like, them both, like, embracing each other, like, covered in mud, being like, I found you too, it didn't break. Peak romance, MXTX. Peak romance. Like, there's nothing, it's like, MXTX is a master of, like, this, like, granted, MXTX can write some great sexual content. Don't get me wrong. I've read Modal Zushi. But I love the fact that she writes stuff that's so romantic without having, like, any sexual context at all. It's like, my little heart is aflutter. I'm like, yes. Just the two of them hugging each other. And then pulling on the red string. And I like that we get to hear from Hua Cheng's perspective how he got to Xie Lian as well. We see, like, how they met up with each other and met in the middle, right? Thank goodness they were linked by the red string. And that's when Xie Lian's like, well, clearly this mountain spirit is swallowing up everybody, and we've got to get everybody out of here. We've, like, literally landed in the belly of one of the beasts, right? So there shouldn't be any reason to stick around here any longer. The mountain spirit got dug into from the bottom, so it's not very happy. It's trying to digest us. We'll get out eventually. This must be what same grave in death feels like. And Xie Lian smiled at that when he was like, this must be like death till us part. We're buried together, right? Ha ha ha. And Xie Lian smiled at it. So it's happening, y'all. It's coming. It's coming down the pipeway. It's happening. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm like, literally like, we're getting so close, y'all. We're getting so close. And that's when they realize, that's when they do the whole forehead thing where they put their foreheads together to see the silver butterfly's perspective and to see through. I like it's in Qi Ying's hair, his curly hair, and that the butterfly's there like a little spy device. And Yin Yu has come to find him in the wall. So I'm assuming Yin Yu's going to break him out. Maybe. I'm assuming we're going to find out more with this. Maybe. I don't know. I find the murals are fascinating because I don't know, they're like the whole mechanics of the murals are creepy because they're magic and they disappear, and I don't know why somebody would put them there just for Xie Lian, and if they are, what's the point? And their like contents are creepy because of them mirroring Shanla so much. So there's a lot of creepiness going on. I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know. I'm probably just going to ask Discord and be like, just tell me yes or no, is the Goshi the crown prince? Yes or no? Because that way I can just stop theorizing about it and just leave it out, or it's going to drive me crazy because that's what this has done. That's where I'm at. I'm like literally tearing my hair out and like about to cry. I'm like, So I'm sorry, y'all, if I didn't theorize more, but it is bothering me a lot. So I may need to ask about that. And just moving forward, please be careful with spoilers. Please be careful with leading comments. Please, even if you're joking, it's done a number on me and it's messed up my brain. So these were long chapters and we got a lot out of them, but a lot of it was action, honestly. I mean, we got the stuff with the murals, which was really cool, but a lot of it was action. And I really, really am excited now that we've got Yin Yu involved to get more into. I feel like this whole volume is just about the Brocade Immortal. This whole volume is literally just the Brocade Immortal and what it's doing. So that's exciting. I'm excited to hear more. I'm going to keep this unresolved plot point thing up though, and I'm going to gather my thoughts for the next chapter set, but I'm going to wait until the manhwa comes out so I can look at it at least and talk with y'all next week about the manhwa and the next set of chapters, which will be chapters 159 through 162. But I'm going to gather my wits together. I'm going to get focused and then come back next week and we'll talk about those next chapters for part 51 and just see what this reunion between Yin Yu and Qi Ying ends up giving us. So in the meantime, I'm excited to hear your comments down below. Please, no spoilers, hints, or clues, but I'm excited to hear what you guys thought about these chapters. I'm going to go take my dogs out. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with more Heaven Officials Blessing.